there are boundaries to laughter and there are boundaries to cracking a joke. And Islam has a very clear set of boundaries for that. So the question is, are people aware of those boundaries?
Yeah.
There is this quote unquote imam who's reciting the Quran apparently, and he's doing it very fast and making all these type of sounds and X, Y, and Z and that.
Those videos came up, so you started to use Islam and kind of create these memes. And I started to do it. And I got a bunch of views and like millions of views and a lot of followers. Okay, you're getting this awareness, right? But what's the cost?
Yeah.
What's the trade-off you're doing right now? Are you like we talked about, are you making a mockery of the religion? Even if you're not, how will people perceive it? Right? Social media is a numbers game.
Numbers game, right, yeah.
Oh, you get this reach and followers and everything, but the quality, where's the quality, right? The two things I've realized that every Muslim needs to have is one, seek knowledge, right? Because obviously if you don't know the boundaries, you have no idea what you're doing. And secondly, have good company around you, people keeping you accountable.
How can you fear something or have fear of something or be aware of something if you don't know what it is in the first place you have to fear?
Yeah.
People don't necessarily want to be engaged intellectually. They want to be engaged and stimulated, right?
When you see how the Prophet he dealt with people, it was not only knowledge. It was knowledge in a context to the person he spoke to.
Exactly
right?
That, yeah.
Success doesn't come from this dunya. Yeah, you don't get success in the dunya from dunya. You get success in dunya from the creator who created dunya.
A world full of the first is not worth one of the second. How that belief manifests in their actions, because as we know, belief, it starts in the heart and it's expressed on the tongue and the limbs. So if I believe in something truly, like the people who are on social media, they believe in Islam, then it has to manifest that belief in my statements and my actions. And those statements and actions have to be in line with what God the Almighty Allah is pleased with. We've become accustomed to clicking, swiping, liking and sharing, all to have a laugh and a giggle. But why is it that nowadays the religion has become laughing stock of millions around the globe? Is this right? Is this wrong? Should we be people who make memes out of the very thing that we believe in? Well, today we're going to discuss it with my guests, Ismail and Simon. So I think firstly, let's understand this trend and let's break it down. And let's break it down from the perspective of, like, is it really something that's right to incorporate Islamic practices, Islamic acts of worship in social media in that way? I mean, what do you think? Have you come across it first of all? I don't know
of course. Like social media is entertainment, right? But I think I don't know, Ismail can probably help us out here with his knowledge, but I think Ismail, if we start there, right? Is it allowed to, if like social media, if we talk about social media, is it allowed? Is it okay?
Because you got the dynamic of people presenting themselves on social media, right? And then you've got Muslims that want to be proud of their religion. They think that the only way they can present themselves on social media is to do something Islamic, because then that's better than just wasting time, right? But then that falls into the category of being, slightly mocking, slightly, making Islam or religion itself into entertainment. Is that the right thing to do? As we mentioned, is it even allowed, Aslan?
I think the big problem is we see those clips where the guys start pretending to pray. There's all kind of, I've seen some kind of like, I wouldn't like to say creative, but creative in nonsense, where they've even got one guy where he's standing, he's wearing his clothes in a way that the person who's joining the prayer thinks that he's facing that way, but his reality facing that way. Right. So they've even gone to some like levels of like so-called creativeness. So the problem with this is we know that even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who were, from with the Sahaba, they were essentially believers,
right?
And they made a joke about the Sahaba, saying we haven't seen such people who are bigger, biggest in bellies, and something like the most afraid, or something along those lines when it comes to battle. And that's when the verse was, and then they said we were just joking, and that's when the verse came down and said, "Is it with are you with Allah and His messenger? You made mockery. You used to you mock about.
Yeah.
Don't apologize. You have disbelieved after
that one.
your iman." So
here's like disbelief. We're going into
very dangerous.
Very dangerous thing to do.
Of course, we cannot label anybody, of course, but as a general concept, this is like, who even wants to say, let me do it. Inshallah, it's 50-50 whether I could disbelieve or not. Who wants to go down that road in the first place?
But shouldn't we clear that out though? Like for the people watching, they're going to be like new Muslims, going to be non-Muslims, right?
Yeah.
So, are we allowed to joke in Islam?
Of course, you can joke in Islam. I have to advise myself, because even sometimes we do that without even realizing. We crack a joke and there's an element that's not true in it.
Yeah.
We know the Prophet ﷺ said, not to lie, even in jest.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you tell a joke, when you add an element of it not being true, and that's something that's difficult sometimes to get out of as well, because it's become so entwined in most societies that you get together to crack a joke. You say something that's not true to crack a joke to lighten the tone of the thing.
Yeah.
So that's also something that should be avoided.
Or even this prank culture we got, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So everything is about nowadays, and that's like makes me think, like, is it a misunderstanding? Is it because they want to, they desire something from this kind of engagement? Because as you said, we're in a culture now where everybody wants to be laughed at or seen as the one who's funny, and the seriousness has come away from society. Like, the person who is serious, is disciplined, is well-rounded. Oh, you're boring, man. Oh, you know what? This word has become very widespread. Like, everything is boring. It's not fast-paced enough. People sitting down to read a book. And I watched the other day, like, a podcast from a guy from America who used to be an ex-gangster. He said, even in those days, we used to read books. We used to sit down, we used to have a serious side to us. It wasn't all about laughing and joking. And the reality is now everything has become about laughing and joking. And I think, as Ismail has said, is that there are boundaries to laughter and there are boundaries to cracking a joke. And Islam has a very clear set of boundaries for that. So the question is, are people aware of those boundaries?
Yeah.
Because it looks like those boundaries are blurred, and in most cases, actually completely lines have been drawn over.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? The boundaries. Because I'm thinking, I know when I was a new Muslim, right? And I remember I watched some of the, Islamic, what you call preachers. And there was a period they talked about this prank culture. Even like in non-Muslim context was, they do a lot of pranks out, social experiment and all that. And I know, I remember a preacher, he said we even had pranksters in Islam, the companions of the Prophet. So I was thinking we're looking at that time in the context of our time. So today, there's no I can imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those days there was certain honor you had, and once you broke that, you don't break your word, for example, don't lie, and today's the opposite. It's like you said, the blurred lines. So it's almost I think hard for people when you in this context, like Ismail said, even when we crack a joke with each other, it's hard to stay away from these things, right? So how do that's one thing, how do you, we got these preachers saying that's fine, just prank, and we got these pranksters. I don't know if you heard these people say that. Yeah,
I remember. Go on, please.
Yeah, continue. No, and then in comparison with just being squared, serious all the time, and how do you there need to be a balance, right?
I remember once I was attending a set of conference lectures in a conference, and they discussed a companion by the name of Nu'man. I don't remember his other name, but I remember Nu'man, and he was a companion where he was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one day he sold off one of the companions, and he used some words that can be seen as it's not a lie. They're seen as, they can mean something, but mean something else at the same time. So he said, this guy is a slave. And they were like, yeah, he's a slave. He was like, yeah, he's a slave. Meaning he's a slave of Allah. So they like purchased him for a horse and something like that. And I remember listening to this, and they were discussing in this, in this dars, or this lecture, that there was this companion who was praying practical jokes. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, he would correct what he did wrong. So for example, he went back and got that companion, he gave back the horse, he made the situation right again. But they were saying that he wasn't admonished for it. So this is the issue where people might hear, okay, they're pranksters, but it's about going overboard, right?
Yeah.
With those boundaries. And the sheikh was actually, or the scholar was actually explaining that just because we have these representations of certain companions playing practical jokes for fun or whatever else, there was a line and there was a boundary, and it's not something that should be done actually. At the end of the day, it's something that if done in excess or X, Y, and Z, it leads to other crimes and it leads to other bad things. So I can't remember the conclusion of what the scholar was mentioning, but I remember him bringing it up, and that's kind of where we say that they are pranksters,
Yeah.
But the reality is those stories are very few and far in between. Do you know what I mean? They're not like the default position that everybody was like that in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him. I don't know if you heard of this companion. Have you heard of anything like this?
It sounds familiar, but I can't give you in any great detail. But we know that Prophet ﷺ, he used to joke, but there was truth.
Exactly.
One time he said to an old lady, "There's no old lady, in
paradise."
Jannah.
Yeah.
And she started to get upset, and the Prophet said, like, meaning everybody in Jannah will be, I think it was around the age of 35.
Yeah.
So there's elements where you can, and there's other examples that don't come to mind right now, as in the exact wording, where he did similar things, But and there's time where Prophet ﷺ would like be playful with the Sahaba and joke, but there's like you said, there's like etiquette to it. You shouldn't be lying, blatantly lying, like making up a story to crack a joke, for example, that kind of thing. And the problem is now, like, now
when you're saying that, I'm thinking social media now. It's like no etiquette.
Now it's the opposite. I mean, and I know we're not repeating too much of what we may have said in previous episodes, but now literally the people who are like the most ridiculous pranksters, I mean, they do the most stupid things. They're the ones now that everyone looks up to. They're making millions. Yeah. They're doing celebrity boxing matches and all kinds of stuff. Yes. Yeah. And in reality, their content is absolute nonsense. I think one of them, he even went one time to a place in Japan where people unfortunately commit suicide. It's a famous forest. Like he went there and filmed the dead bodies hanging. I never saw the video, but I heard about it.
But he wasn't a Muslim, though.
No, he wasn't a Muslim. No.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, because and that obviously made him go more viral. I mean, what kind of what kind of level you're going to stoop to for views?
For views, yeah.
That's the thing.
So I think what we can see here is that clearly, for those watching, Islam has a set of boundaries. And it's clearly, we can take from that the mass of people who are doing this stuff and making this content for views and likes and shares may have, and actually in most cases have, a lot of misunderstanding where those boundaries are.
Yep.
So the question is that with those type of videos and those type of trends that are coming out, how much is impacting, or how much do you think is actually impacting non-Muslims' view on Islam? How they actually viewing Islam for a religion in and of itself? Because obviously, like, for people looking outside in, they're going to see, these Muslims, look what they're doing. And they kind of take that judgment. And I mean, I don't know if it's happened to any of you, but definitely in my family, I've had people say like, oh, that person does it, so why don't you do it? And I'm like, but that's not what Islam is. Oh, well, how do I know? Because they're doing it.
I remember when I became Muslim, as we know from previous episodes, as a teenager, I remember one time I had someone who kind of, a bit like a social worker, like, just, because they're looking at like what's happening to me kind of thing. So I remember her saying like, why do you pray 5 times a day? Your friends don't. Yeah. So exactly. And I said, look, I didn't become Muslims, for them. They don't pray. That's, may Allah guide them. That's between them. But I'm praying because I want to pray. Yeah. So people often do that. They compare unfortunately, they compare Muslims to the worst people who are supposed Muslims,
Yeah.
who do things far from Islam, and they compare you to the Muslims who are also doing other things, like, oh, he doesn't pray 5 times a day, he prays once a day. Why don't you pray once a day? Or he's a Muslim and
Like two extremes.
He comes out and drinks with us. Why can't you drink with us?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or she's a Muslim and she doesn't wear a hijab. Why are you wearing a hijab?
Hijab, yeah.
So we always say to them, like, forget the Muslims on both extremes.
Yep.
Islam, Muslims aren't perfect, but Islam is.
So how can we try to bridge that gap when these social media platforms aren't specifically targeted, for example, for just Muslim audience? They're targeted to whatever the world, the religions, whatever the faith you follow. If you're agnostic, atheist, you've got access to these platforms. And a lot of the time they might see, for example, like, I don't know, a viral trend at the moment, which is like, there is this quote unquote imam who's reciting the Quran, apparently, and he's doing it very fast and making all these type of sounds and X, Y, and Z and that. And I might be, or someone might be watching it and thinking to himself, okay, well, this is normal. This is what they do. Look how strange that is. And if they say that, look how strange that is, then they have a preconceived perception of Islam. How can we say that, or to those people that are maybe watching or may come to see this isn't what Islam is, when they are exposed to thousands and millions of videos and trends where people are pretending this is what they do in Islam? How can we break this norm that has now become a part of society and this misinformation?
I'm thinking, the thing is, I don't know if you should cut it, but I want to be like, I'm thinking about myself, right? And when I became a Muslim and then started with social media, because I didn't do a lot of social media before that. And when I started with social media, I was a Muslim, and I saw, again, with this culture, these trends coming up, and I think a lot of people can, relate to that you have the intention, like you said, okay, we got atheists, we got Christians, we got all these people on this social media, let's show them Islam. Let's like spread Islam somehow, right? The intention of spreading Islam, and then you do it, and then maybe you're being very respectful, and you start, like, I remember when I did my videos, okay, it was a lot about fitness, but then I started to do some Islam videos, right? I did the sign language videos, right? And then there was this where, remember when Instagram got the Reels thing with the, you swipe the video, the short videos, and all the people started to do these kind of, that's when those videos came up with the prayer and the guy, those videos came up. So you started to use Islam and kind of create these memes, right? And I started to do it, and I got a bunch of views, and like millions of views and a lot of followers. And I think we talked about it, like, and I also talked with the brothers in Sweden, the students of knowledge, and say, like, look, okay, you're getting this awareness, right? But what's the cost? Yeah. What's the trade-off you're doing right now? Like we talked about, are you making a mockery of the religion? Even if you're not, how will people perceive it? Like you said, how will these atheists and Christians perceive it? And I think people forget that, and they look at the numbers. Right? Social media is a numbers game.
Numbers game, right, yeah.
Oh, you get this reach and followers and everything, but the quality, where's the quality, right? And at the end of the day, we're Muslims. Success comes from Allah, not from social media platforms, and not the reach. So I think the people that they're doing it and they're opening up accounts, they want to spread Islam. Two things that really helped me I'm still, I'm imperfect. I'm doing a lot of mistakes, right? We talked about the other day with one video I did, right? The two things I've realized that every Muslim needs to have is, one, seek knowledge, right? Because obviously, if you don't know the boundaries, how do you, like, you have no idea what you're doing. And secondly, have good company around you, people keeping you accountable. Like, I have Ismail every video, I get a message, hey, bro, you should exit off. No, but that's good. That's good. Like, if you have you're accountable, and that's what Islam is about, isn't it? Yeah. Like, you see your brother.
Building blocks, right? It's
interesting because the scholars, the Islamic stuff, they say in Arabic, if I remember it correctly, كيف يتقي من لا يعرف, I can't remember it exactly, but basically, if you translate it, it's approximately like, how can you fear something or have fear of something or be aware of something if you don't know what it is in the first place you have to fear? Yeah. So
You're
like you
ignorant,
said,
basically.
Yeah.
if you don't have the knowledge of what, and that's why the scholars, they also say, learn the evil, not do the evil. Learn what is evil to protect yourself from the evil.
And this is a famous statement of the companion said that. He said, I learned the evil.
Not for the evil.
Not for the evil, but so I cannot fall into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings me on to the next question I was going to ask is that what do you think that the Muslim community's responsibility should be for this sort of stuff? Should there be a group of people who are kind of the they say halal police, right?
Yeah.
Who would go out around and advise people? And I know myself. I'll give you an example. Sometimes I see things and I just can't hold myself. I make a few words and I send a few verses and a few bit of information that identifies this thing is wrong. Okay, because I can't stay silent. We shouldn't stay silent. We should be people who enjoy the good and forbid the evil. So kind of you have that, right? And you have a mentor or somebody who's there to say this is right, this is wrong. But what, as a Muslim community, what should our reaction be to these type of content? Because quite often or not, you see it's going viral, and a lot of the people are Muslim who are engaging in this content.
I think one way to do it, I mean, I don't think we practically all of us can go and correct everybody.
No.
But I think the more of us who are able to create the opposite of that, create the positive content. So maybe for someone, he doesn't have the knowledge to do it, or he doesn't want to do it himself, but he can create an account where he's posting regular clips of scholars, for example. So you're kind of combating that with what is correct and what is the right way to do things. Because in an ideal situation, we search for every account where there's a Muslim who's posting something which is inappropriate. But it's not always that simple. And how many times you're going to try and reach out to them? They're not even going to read your message. It's going to go in that. Even you put it the same thing on account. Sometimes you go and you realize you've got like 20 messages from people. I didn't even know they came because they went into this other
when there's other
requests box or something like that. So reality of individually being able to go and advise everybody. So if you're a content person and you don't want to make those mistakes, like Brother Simon says, you need to find people who you know that can advise you on that kind of thing. And or at least if you're a person, you can try and do the opposite. Put the correct content of Islam out there and try to push it as much as you can to combat the wrong information that's out there.
It's a very good point you've raised here. It's actually made me think of a question I asked one of the scholars when they came to UK when I was there. And I asked about the different types of people in Islam pushing knowledge or pushing information out. His response was quite interesting. He said that we have scholars, okay, and a scholar might not be a teacher, and we have a teacher, but they may not be a scholar. And we have a khatib, which is a person who delivers a Friday sermon. He doesn't have to be a scholar. Maybe he's got good in speaking and so on and so forth. And he said, like, you have to find where you fit in and kind of put it out. And this is very interesting because what you said is that we should be people who combat it, right? Do the opposite of what's going on, or try to produce more content that is, in contrast to what's being pushed out. And yes, we have the lectures, we can record that, we can take snippets and share them out. But what we're finding here is that people don't necessarily want to be engaged intellectually. They want to be engaged and stimulated, right? So what can we produce as Muslim content creators that will stimulate the minds of our audience and keep that in entertainment? And does that change based upon cultures and places?
Like that. I mean, there's this phrase, right? Edutainment, right? That was coined by one of the non-Muslims, companies, entertainment companies, that the best way to reach someone is not only doing purely entertainment and not only purely education, but something in between. That you give a value in a way that, because what is entertainment is something like you said, stimulating the audience in some way, right? And it can be, you got entertainment in we got comedy we talked about, right? But you got entertainment in different types, like people like to watch, horror, right? That type of entertainment. And I think, isn't it like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you see how the Prophet ﷺ, he dealt with people, it was not only knowledge. It was knowledge in a context to the person he spoke to.
Exactly
right?
right, yeah.
So that person could receive the knowledge in a way that fitted him. And like, I'm thinking like, entertainment is just the way of reaching a person, like the way he likes it. Some people like to be harsh. Some people like to be a little bit soft, right? So I think that's at the end of the day, just have a good role model, I think, isn't it? Like looking at how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with different people and do the same. And that comes back to having knowledge about who the Prophet ﷺ was and like how he dealt with people. Because otherwise you're going to have these role models that might not be good role models, even if they're so-called Muslim influencers or whatever. That's what I've seen. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing here is like we're seeing there's a framework that we're kind of naturally going towards, which is that, okay, first we need to understand there are boundaries. Okay, that's tick. We understand there are boundaries. Okay, now we need to learn those boundaries because we need knowledge. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that knowledge is going to serve to what we're going to put out as well. And then we're going to look at holistically, what the audience requires and how we can deliver it, right? So we see that actually we're building for somebody who's watching the strategy to become a content creator in the right way. So I have gone on this journey. I'm taking this journey now. I'm trying to fix my content, so on and so forth. And I know there's content out there that is bad. I'm kind of going to shift the dynamic to, do you think that those social media platforms should have a way to regulate religious content? Because, if we're seeing that no matter what religion it is, if someone ridicules the Bible in Islam, that is not acceptable. You cannot ridicule the original Bible that was sent down from God the Almighty. You can't ridicule the followers of Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, in the religion that they followed, because it's actually part of our belief to believe in it. So we say that the social media platform allows freedom of speech. I can ridicule, say whatever I want about another religion. What do you think the responsibility should be of those social media platforms?
That's a big question, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped the hammer time.
I think it's a big question, and also I think it's difficult to regulate because there may be so many there may be like differences of opinion out there, not Islamically, but in the public, of what is acceptable, what's not acceptable.
Yeah, what is freedom of speech?
Yeah,
right?
Or what is mockery and what isn't mockery. So for the average non-Muslim, maybe that thing of pretending to pray is for them. They don't look at it as a big mockery thing, but we know as Islam, it's a big. So I think it's very hard to regulate that stuff. To be honest, and there's some things which are blatantly outright mockery. Insulting, of course, but there's things that like these pranks. It could be that most social media platforms don't look at that as being an issue because they're not coming from the same mentality.
Exactly. And that just brings us back to the very first, second, and the last point that we just mentioned, is that it actually is a responsibility of the individual using this platform. They have to be responsible. We have to be, if we are going to say and claim we are Muslim, as God the Almighty mentions in the Holy Quran, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ, to the end of the ayah, say, if you truly love Allah, then to follow his messenger and the way that he practiced Islam. And then Allah will love you. So we know that there is this is the they call it the verse of test. If you really want to test your relationship with God the Almighty, see how well or how close you're following the teachings and of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him. So it comes back again to, if I'm going to be a religious individual who says I love Islam and I love Allah and I love this religion, that's why I want to show it to the masses. I have to follow the way in which it needs to be shared. And I think that really solidifies the whole idea of self-accountability and self-responsibility. Don't be part of the problem, but be part of the solution, inshallah ta'ala. So that kind of, how can we or others as content creators start to take this responsibility seriously, and how can we change the dynamic of some of the content we have already, or put forward a new dynamic in any content we want to release?
I've seen, back in Sweden, with the students of knowledge that do a lot of social media, right? One of them, he told me, like, he talks about it not only like publicly. He says that where, we Muslims, the laymen, we first need to fear Allah and know that Allah always sees us, right? No matter what we do. We are Muslims. We're representing Islam. And even if you go and, you got these accounts that creating, fake accounts and commenting and doing, debates and everything. Allah will see that. It's not like it's a fake account with another name and you're not responsible. We're all responsible what we do. Like you said, we need to be hold ourselves accountable. I think that's the first step. And this next step is, remove your ego out of the way. Like, especially if you're doing, because there are two types of content, right? You can do content like, okay, I'm doing about fitness, Ismail doing something about, other stuff, and you don't, right? It's not directly connected to Islam. You could do some, connection with Islam, but it's not Islamic content. And then you got Islamic content, right? And I think, like you said, we need to know our places. Who are you? Are you a student? Like, do you have knowledge to spread Islam? Or like Ismail said, maybe you can share other scholars. But it's not about getting clicks and likes. It's doing, I think, both concepts, like providing benefit, be the solution, right? And you cannot be part of a solution if you just have an ego. Yeah. Right? You need to be humble. So I think first intention, and then just be humble, and have, like we said, have a good people around you that keep you accountable.
That's just, as you're saying that, I'm just thinking about some, as you said, we're all content creators in our own respect. And I have a series that is not available to the public, but it's on a paid platform. And I'm basically a life skills coach. Now, as a life skills coach, I'm obviously living a life of Islam. I might teach someone how to make a cake, but that I bring that back to how Islamically, we can make that an act of worship.
A cake. You said a cake.
Yeah, a cake.
You're really doing...
I really do that, yeah.
You know how to do a cake?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, nice.
I think this...
You tasted his cakes?
No, I don't. I think we need proof of this. I think
I mean,
next podcast, he needs to bring us a so-called cake of his.
You can't mention cake and...
I'm going to bring it to you. I'm going to bring the evidence. I'll bring the evidence. But here, it really sticks in my mind is that when I started this series, the platform owners, they mentioned that because of my level of knowledge, I have to stop at this level, this boundary.
Yeah,
okay? The limit, which is that I'm not going to go into technical issues. I'm not going to go into anything that requires further research or I need to bring too much evidence because I've got a short amount of time. So they know the level that I'm on, and my teachers have also spoken about it and whatever else. But so I bring life skills, and I bring a hadith, which is a narration of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. I bring a verse, peace and blessing be upon him. I bring a verse from the Quran, and I give a general explanation of how that links to the action that we're doing. But the whole idea is I'm trying to instill this whole idea of that I'm going to share content, but I want to share content from a religious standpoint. And my show is mainly is entertainment, to be honest. It's not really educationally like driven. It's like, as you said, it's in between two things. I'm giving you can do something, for example, like how to change a tire on your car, how to iron your shirt, how to bake a cake, which is educational, but I'm trying to bring the fun into it, and there is that Islamic presence. Right. So it's kind of like we all can do it. And the reason why I bring this to the forefront of this discussion is that when I first was asked to do this series, or when I first started this series, it wasn't about likes and shares or whatever, because it's not on social media platform. But what we've seen by the numbers of the students or whatever else, this actually has become one of the most viewed series on the whole entire platform. And now what this proves is that you can do it, and you can be somebody who provides content which is Islamically within the boundaries. It does have an element of entertainment to it, and it can go far. You don't have to be ridiculous in order to get likes and shares. You don't have to be the class clown to get everybody to focus on you. If you do it the right way, as you mentioned, you have the support and the aid of God the Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which ultimately you can make one video with the intention in the right way and can go viral overnight.
100%. 100%.
So I just thought about sharing that, because it was something that when I went to the mosque, some of these young kids, well, not even that. I went to the mosque in UK, and one of the fathers came up to me and goes, "Oh, thank you for this coffee. And I was thinking, what is he talking about? It clicked. He goes, yeah, you got a series, how to make a iced coffee. Yeah. And he goes, my son made it for me and it was delicious. And it's like, it's created like a bonding between them. And I was just insignificant to me. Okay, I do this series. But when I traveled around, I've seen the impact of this series in the life of other people. And it's just reminded me that as you said, like, you don't have to do all these foolish things in order to get, exposure, to be honest, And I think that's an idea, or that's a expression of a success story. Okay, it's my success story, and I'm not trying to self-praise here, but it's a living experience that I can share with other people. And the next question I was going to ask and want to ask is that, do you have any experiences in your own life on your own social media platforms where that's been the case, where you can actually say, this is a tried and tested method, I did it within the boundaries and it has worked? Let's start with Ismail.
I think Simon's the guy to ask on that. He's social media.
No, you're all over for social media,
no,
bro.
But not like mashallah Simon. I'm just
Miskin. We start with me.
Yeah, start with you.
No, I remember when I started with social media, one of the things again, we all do mistakes, right? That's normal, fine, as long as you clear that up, you clean it up. But one thing I always, like, when I started, I don't want to do like these, especially when I did fitness. I remember, okay, in a lot of fitness video, there's a lot of showing of bodies that shouldn't be there, and a lot of music that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, okay, these are like at least the two conditions I want to stay away from, right? Even you see today, unfortunately, with Muslim influencers in the fitness industry, they don't follow that, right? Because they believe that, wait, I got a business, I'm a personal trainer, whatever, I need to do this. This is what I need to show my body, right? We talked about it before. I need to show this, I need to do this, I need to have music, I need to have all this. But you don't. Like, I've never like put, these things. And sure, it might be like, okay, you film a video in the gym, a story, and unintentionally there's music in the background, maybe some, and if someone tells me, there's music, remove it, sure. But in general, and I think, again, like you said, success doesn't come from this dunya. Yeah, you don't get success in the dunya from dunya. You get success in dunya from the creator who created dunya, right? That's it. I mean, follow the principle of Islam. Like the verse in the Quran, fear Allah, fear Allah so that you might be successful, right?
Yeah.
So they start with the success. In Surah Al-Baqarah, right? So the success comes because you fear Allah. It's not like success and then maybe you fear Allah after that. This you start with Allah first. So no matter what you do, even if it's not on social media, right? You fear Allah and Allah will give you success. Privately, publicly, it doesn't matter, right? We got great imams, right? That, you look at their lives and think like, how this, he was basically sitting in a prison, right? We got these scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, right? And mashallah, like today we're talking about him as Shaykh al-Islam, the Shaykh of Islam, right? And you wouldn't think, like, if you see a guy today sitting in prison writing books, like, you don't think like, oh, he's going to be a big guy someday, right? So sometimes you can be in a very humble position, but Allah raises you because of that, because you had the intention, right? And someone might have a high position, but he's, embarrassing him or showing him, like, lowering him in position because he doesn't follow Allah. So,
what you just said reminds me of a narration that I often ponder over, and I do think about it a lot. And I was just thinking about it just before, maybe today or maybe yesterday. And it's when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he was sitting with his companions, and he saw a man walk past, and he said, "What do you think of this guy?" And they said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, if he's to speak, he should be heard, and if he's to be proposed to, he should be married off, and he's of the noble people." He remained silent, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, next man walked past, he goes, "What do you think of him?" He said, "Oh, he's of the weakest, and if he's to be proposed to, he shouldn't be married, and if he's to be if he speaks, he's not to be heard, and so on and so forth. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, he said, "A world full of the first is not worth one of the second." And if we just ponder over that for a second, a world full of the first that everybody thought that was the big, celebrity. Look at me, yeah, he's noble. Because we're talking about perception now.
Yeah.
And that's how people perceive him or perceive that person because of his station. But the reality is, a world full of that person that you perceive to be the greatest and the most noblest in society is not worth one of the one who, as the Prophet Muhammad, as you mentioned, is the second. And the second one is, the one generally speaking is not that type of individual.
Yeah.
He's a person who's trying to do what's right, and he's trying to do what's right from his heart. He's trying to do it with the pleasure of Almighty God, being at the forefront of everything. He's making sure that he's not getting likes and ticks and swipes and clicks and whatever else, because that's his goal, his vision. So he's going to do everything and anything for it. No, he's making sure there's boundaries and things that are being met. And maybe his spread, his reach isn't as wide. But the reality is, as you mentioned, what is real success? And I think that's what we want to come back to, because all of these people doing this, they want a sense of success. But what is true success? And in Islam, we have a very clear defined clear defined message of what success is. And I think that's what we need to remind all of these social influencers, or even our own selves. No, in fact, we need to remind our own selves first and foremost, but also these people who are thinking of creating content, are creating content, whatever it might be, that God the Almighty has defined success very clearly.
Yeah.
And again, it brings me back to another place in Islam where I ponder over a lot, which is Surah Mu'minun. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Successful indeed are the believers. And then it goes on to list 7 different things. And I just wonder how we can reignite that in the community, reignite that on the social media platforms, that success is not how many likes you get, not how many clicks and ticks and whatever it is you get. Success is God the Almighty being pleased with you. And that's really what's valuable. What do you think, Ismail?
Definitely. And I think we can probably do another episode. We can, talk about like what are truly successful habits or traits for a person.
Exactly.
That itself can be, we can do that as a separate episode, because, you have all those books out there, the 7 habits of successful people and things like that. We can do something, we can touch upon, more from what is the real aspects of successful people, from an Islamic viewpoint, which I think will also be interesting for the non-Muslim viewers to see how do Muslims, if they're following the teachings of Islam, how do they view success?
Exactly. Yeah. This is something that I found very unique myself as when I entered into the faith, and as I'm getting, progressing more into the religion, is that the definition of success changes dramatically. Yeah. 100%. For me, success was I'm rich, I'm famous, everyone's calling my name. Yeah. I'm successful. But then you read, and especially that surah, that chapter of the Holy Quran, when you read what God the Almighty says success is, and what the characteristics of the believers are who have success, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's not that.
It's not that. It's not that. It never was that, And I remember saying to and I was going back to my teacher, and I was saying how amazing this verse is. God saying, the people who are successful are the ones who are conscious in their prayer. And he brought something to my attention before this. He said, and what comes before this? And I was pondering over it, but he said, God the Almighty says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. So he said, number 1 is belief. That's what makes a person successful. The belief in what they do and how that belief manifests in their actions. Because as we know, belief, it starts in the heart and it's expressed on the tongue and the limbs. So if I believe in something truly, like the people who are on social media, they believe in Islam, then it has to manifest that belief in my statements and my actions. And those statements and actions have to be in line with what God the Almighty Allah is pleased with.
100%.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. قد أفلح المؤمنون.
I look forward to that episode though.
Yeah.
I see Ismail's cooking up some things here.
It's cooking it up in the mind there.
Brainstorming.
Yeah.
I think, you know what, I could just say, just off the cuff, if you just take really those, 7 characteristics, that's a whole podcast in itself, and volumes of books actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because each one can be discussed in and of itself very thoroughly and in depth. What is belief, for example? What does it mean? What is the belief system in Islam, and how does that impact every single action of ours? Then you can go into prayer. What is consciousness in the prayer? What is, it goes into many different things.
100%.
It's very, very interesting. And another thing that actually really is significant in this discussion is that God the Almighty mentions they are the people who stay away from lewd speech. And in the tafsir it mentions that listening to and speaking.
SubhanAllah.
So here,
it's not even just lewd, is it? It's like, you can also translate it as idle speech.
Idle, yeah, exactly.
It's
idle
basically
speech.
like useless. It's not even just like lewd. Lewd is one thing, right? Where it's foul, it's perverted, it's disgusting. But even idle speech. Like speech is just worthless,
Yeah.
Playful speech, level.
Purposeless,
playful, useless kind of speech,
And that's exactly
non-productive, you mean?
Non-productive. And that's exactly what the whole issue we're addressing in this podcast is.
Yeah, the social media book.
It's social media.
Yeah.
It's just
definition of.
It's the definition of this,
SubhanAllah.
And for us to really be successful, we have to stay away from that. And I think that's what kind of we all need to educate our communities with, is that realistically this is what success is. And we need to go back to that. And yes, you can do your social media posts, no problem. Yes, you can educate the community, no problem. And if you've got 1,000 likes, million views, whatever, now you have an opportunity to use those million followers and million likes to actually shift the dynamic and allow them to actually taste Islam for what it really is, and to change and kind of correct some of those misconceptions that people might have now.
Because the whole topic of who are those who are successful, and then the opposite side was, like you mentioned, those who avoid or stay away from idle speech. So that's definitely what I think we should talk about in the next episode, is what is the definition of success in Islam, and how can you be successful? And obviously we say...
Is that going to be the next episode though?
We definitely should, I think. I definitely think we should focus on something like that for the next episode.
Okay.
Because everyone wants to be successful.
And
of course we will say that success lies ultimately in Islam. But what does that mean to people, What are the traits you have to be as a human that Islam is telling you, if you do these, you're successful?
That's it, bro. I think that's a perfect place to land and end it. So you've heard it. There are boundaries to using social media as it relates to Islam. You also have heard that a lot of these videos that you might come across are not a true representation of Islam at all. And in fact, they fall into the category of being a mockery. But why are these people putting out these videos? Is to attain what they believe success is. Well, stay tuned, for we are going to explain what success is in light of Islam in the next episode. So we'll see you in the next episode.